the problem for most of us with stress is that we are able to get used to higher and higher and higher levels of stress without even noticing it because of the way we naturally try to cope with things. And most of us don't notice our stress until a certain coping mechanism fails. And that's, what lands so many of us in burnout is that we were able to ignore the problem or shove it aside, long enough until the stress became so much that even our bodies and our brains they couldn't wave any more, flags and, make more alerts or give us any more signals. And so that's how most of us end up in burnout.
Hello, Jennifer. It's so nice to have you on the show today. How are you doing?
Hello, I'm great. How are you?
I am doing quite fine, Jennifer, and thank you so very much for being here. You see, I truly appreciate you. And you see, Jennifer, oftentimes I love to thank my guest for two things. And I do this so often to the point where it has become my anthem. So, firstly, Jennifer, I want to say thank you so very much for investing in yourself. You see, you are on this platform right now because you did invest it in yourself. And oftentimes, Jennifer, I love to
Thank
make
you.
reference to the amazing mango tree. You see, some couple of months back, yeah, I was on a particular road, and just by the roadside, Jennifer, there was this very tall, unattractive mango tree. And I used the word unattractive because the mango tree's got no mangoes on it, and the leaves were all dry. So I just walked past it and I went my way. But you see, Jennifer, just recently I was on that same road. And this time around, a lot's changed about the mango tree, you see. The mango tree caught my attention pretty good from a distance. And immediately, I got the urge to move so close to it, of which I did. And it wowed me because now the mango tree's got a lot of mangoes on it, beautiful green leaves and healthy branches. And not just mangoes now, Jennifer. I'm talking about ripe mangoes. It was such a lovely experience that day, and I was so excited. Here is my point. The fact that you dedicated your time, energy, and resources to becoming the amazing Jennifer that you are today, that alone has made it impossible for me to skip you. And that's why you got the request from me to be on the show because I was attracted to the fruit of all that you're doing, your philosophies, the impact your work is having, and now you are offering your solutions. These stuffs are beautiful. And just before I sent you that request, Jennifer, I said to myself, I've got to benefit from these beautiful things Jennifer is doing. And not only me now, because I don't want to be selfish, and even with the audience. And here we had a day with the amazing Jennifer. So thank you so very much for doing that to yourself. And secondly, thank you for saying yes to the invite. Because if you had said nope, there was nothing Elisha could do about it. Thanks so much, Jennifer.
Thank you. Thank you.
Beautiful. Love it. So let's get started. You see, I am quite excited to have you on the show today for some reasons. Firstly, my interest in knowledge seeking. I believe in order for one to transition from a terrible situation to that of a beautiful one, Jennifer, I believe it takes the application of knowledge, quality information. And you see, ever since I discovered that light in the Hebrew means knowledge and darkness ignorance, I've been so keen to knowledge seeking. Why? Because I do not want to remain in the dark. So that's going to make our conversation today very important to me and even to the listeners. And the second reason I'm excited to have the incredible Jennifer on the show is for the sake of the audience. You see, Jenny, we live in an age where information is as abundant as grains of sand. We've got lots of information flying out there. So those folks trust me for quality, eye-opening, and very important information, of which I am totally convinced, Jennifer, that our conversation is going to be impactful and insightful. So for that reason, Jennifer, let's get started with your introduction. Talk to us about your personal or your professional journey Because right now we are so curious. We want to know how Jennifer got here. Then afterwards, I've gotten some beautiful questions for you. Okay, Jennifer, over to
Got it.
you. And you've got some beautiful dogs there, all right?
Well, thank you for that lovely introduction and explanation. I do appreciate that. And I do appreciate the opportunity to get to know you and get to interact with your audience and introduce myself. So thank you so much for that. My name's Jennifer Bassman. I am a burnout recovery and stress management expert. I have been studying how stress impacts women in particular for about 15 years, thanks to my own burnout, severe burnout experience about 16 years ago or more. It's been a little bit longer than that. And when I burned out, I was a business owner. I still am. I had exhausted myself and didn't manage my energy or my time very well. There were also a lot of other reasons that I burned out, but um, key among them is that I'm a people pleaser and a perfectionist. And those two things drive and as well as consume quite a bit of bandwidth in both energy and time. And I didn't know that about myself going in. That was some major discovery on my burnout recovery journey. But I got into this because when I burned out and was trying to find solutions for myself to recover, I couldn't find much. This wasn't something people were talking about. And we really didn't talk about mental health at that point either. So I was kind of on my own in terms of figuring out why I burned out and then what to do about it. And so like many people, I tried a lot of things and a lot of things didn't work. And, there were a lot of bumps in the road that were very discouraging. But pretty soon, as I did more research about stress and how our body and our brain interact with stress and what the stress response is actually doing to us, I was able to apply that information to things that were more meaningful in terms of recovery experiences. And part of that, was getting to know myself. Like I said, I discovered that I'm a people pleasing perfectionist. I had no idea that was something that I was doing. That was not even on my radar. So figuring out who I was and really what was at the core of my burnout, which, those were two of the things that transformed, that made my burnout recovery so much easier because I was able to respond to that in a way that mattered. And part of that was establishing boundaries. Part of that was learning how to reframe negative thoughts. And the biggest part of that, I would say, is learning how to build mental strength along the way. And so over the last 15 years, as I've continued to experiment and research and learn more and work with hundreds of different clients that, were in the same situation, I've been able to create some tools, some more effective burnout recovery tools, stress management tools that, help us not only build an awareness to our stress, but, help us recover from burnout so that we can go on to live more happy, productive lives.
Awesome, Jennifer. And this is so beautiful. You see,
Thank you.
you went through a particular problem and you were able to come out of it. And you decided to extend your solution to others because you are so particular. You want everyone to, function and do their task and commit to their works and, improve themselves and beautify this world. And you realize that burnout could be an hindrance to that. So you created this tool recovery, what you called it. You created the solution and now you extended it. That's a beautiful one. And that's one of the great
Thank you.
traits of true leaders. And I love that. I tell you, you discovered the core problems, which was you were people pleasers. And I was once like that. And I realized that the more I try to please people, the more I tie my happiness to them. So if they do something that I don't like now, my happiness depends on their reaction. Whatever they do determines if I'll be happy or not. And I discovered that this is just going to destroy me until I was able to,
Right.
overcome this stuff. So the fact that you're doing this stuff and you're extending the solution, I love it. And that's so beautiful. Thank you so very much for what you're doing. So I've got some questions here, Jennifer. Are you ready for me?
Awesome.
Okay. So let us look at what burnout look like today. So what does burnout really look like today?
Now, it can look like a number of things, which is part of the problem. Um, I'll say before I say what burnout actually looks like, burnout is actually a chronic stress issue. Your body has been under so much chronic stress for such a long period of time that your coping mechanisms have basically stopped working. And the problem for most of us with stress is that we are able to get used to higher and higher and higher levels of stress without even noticing it because of the way we naturally try to cope with things. And most of us don't notice our stress until a certain coping mechanism fails. And that's, what lands so many of us in burnout is that we were able to ignore the problem or shove it aside, long enough until the stress became so much that even our bodies and our brains they couldn't wave any more, flags and, make more alerts or give us any more signals. And so that's how most of us end up in burnout. And you're in burnout because you're chronically stressed. You really have a hard time shutting that stress response down. And a lot of that is because when you're, you know, under chronic stress, that basically means you've been creating layer upon layer upon layer upon layer of stress that now we have to, try and break through. But, people that are burned out lack a lot of motivation. They're very cynical, sarcastic in a mean way. I'll go ahead and say that. They're having trouble sleeping. They're having trouble regulating their sleep. Poor diet. You often see people become very carb dependent. So they're eating a lot of sugar, a lot of breads, that type of thing. People that are burned out, often the quality of their work suffers. No matter what they try to do, their work just, the quality of their work is, just declining. They find it hard to be creative. They find it hard to be productive or effective. Your decision making is terrible. And a lot of this has to do with the stress response and what the stress response does to your brain when it's in effect. And just to, give you a quick overview of that, what the stress response is, what's happening to you when you're stressed out, it's a hormone response essentially in your body. And those hormones are actually they're archaic. Our stress response has not modernized as our lifestyles have modernized. So originally, our stress response was, meant to keep us out of danger. And you have a stress response because your brain detects a threat of somewhere, something, some kind to you. So that's immediately what triggers it. Well, back in the caveman and cavewoman days, that could have been a saber-toothed tiger chasing after you. And so when your body responds to stress, it's actually redistributing where basically the energy is going inside of your body, where the blood and oxygen is going, and it's going away from your brain and actually to your extremities so you could run away. Well, that's not really a threat, a common threat or a danger to most of us now. We've become very sedentary. Most of our life is on a computer. So the way we respond to stress is actually difficult for us to recognize or really understand, and control, because the threat is ever present. We're staring at screens everywhere. We're getting overloaded with information, as you pointed out. And so those threats just keep coming at our brain, and our brain just keeps responding. Well, when you don't have as much oxygen going up to your brain, you find it harder to make decisions. You find it harder to think. And also that cortisol and all the stress hormone is actually clouding your judgment as well. So that's also what makes it difficult for us to think and make decisions and regulate our emotions when we get stressed out.
Wow.
So hopefully that was helpful.
I tell you, very, very helpful. And in that case, that means I know a lot of people who are experiencing burnout. In that case, I tell you, wow.
Yep.
Well, thank you for
That's
explaining that.
unfortunate.
I tell you.
Sure.
Okay, so
Yeah.
what about this?
You know,
Okay, go on, please. Go ahead.
and I was just going to say, awareness is a lot of it. And it's,
Mm,
I think once people understand their stress response, like what's actually physically happening, that gives you a lot of power, actually,
mm,
because now you get what's going on and you're going, okay, wait a second. This is what my body wants me to do, but this is actually what I need to do. And over time, you gain more control of that once you understand how those chemicals are affecting your brain.
affecting your brain. So true. And I think women are so, so good at hiding burnout. What do you think?
Women are?
That
You think
women,
women are good at hiding it?
yeah, are so good
Yeah.
at
Oh,
hiding.
yeah, we're great at it. We're great at it. And that's part of the reason nothing against men, but that's part of the reason why I primarily work with women, or I've studied stress in women. We have a similar stress response, men and women, but a woman's stress response is actually more powerful because of our reproductive hormones that are raging through our body and complicating things. These different systems don't live in a vacuum. They actually end up meshing together. And so that's why a lot of women, when, we're stressing out or we're feeling anxiety, we're finding it even harder to control those emotions. We're finding it even harder to think clearly or sit still. And, women get a bad rap for that, but it's actually a biological response that isn't our fault, essentially. But, the major reason I talk about this is because heart disease actually kills more women than all the cancers combined. And stress is at the core of that. Yeah.
That's pretty sad. And thank you for sharing that. Okay, so
You bet.
yeah, how can we, bring joy back after burnout?
How can you bring it back? That's a
Yeah,
great
how can
question.
we bring joy
I'm
back?
sorry, one of my dogs just barked right next to me. So hopefully that isn't coming through. To bring joy back, that's a great question, because that's something a lot of people really struggle with. And part of my, burnout recovery journey for my clients and for people that I talk to you a lot about having more fun, bringing more fun, play, and laughter into your life, because fun actually and laughter is a natural stress killer. And it's instantaneous when it happens. It interrupts your stress response. You can't be stressed out and laughing, at the same time. Those two things just don't mesh. And so I talk a lot to my clients about how to find more joy, which happens by actually counteracting that with happiness hormones that, respond to things that you enjoy. And so it benefits you to find ways to laugh. It benefits you to build more fun into your day. Even if it's just 5 minutes, it's great. That's helpful. That really helps, because it's helping break up that stress response so it doesn't keep building one on top of each other. But, something that I've done, that I found kind of helps you get that ball rolling, is to find one small thing that you can do in like less than 30 seconds, to bring that joy, to bring that laughter. And for me, I love animal videos,
Hmm.
dog videos in particular. I have a treasure trove of them on my phone. They're all over the internet, and I love dogs. I'm obsessed with dogs. So that's part of what helps that. But it makes me laugh, and I can feel, the oxytocin and the serotonin just firing when I see those videos. And I can feel my stress response lowering because that brings me joy. And so you need to find something like that, that really just kind of kickstarts that process, and then build on that. You're naturally bringing those happiness hormones into your brain to counteract all those stress hormones.
Beautiful. And I never thought about that. Well, thank you for sharing that with us. That's a beautiful one.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so
You're
finally,
welcome.
can you talk to us about your burnout solution? You mentioned it. I think you mentioned recovery something. I can't really remember how you said it. So how are you helping folks overcome burnout, like your solution and your approach?
Well, we start by trying to figure out what's at the core of your burnout experience. That seems to be a really key part of, helping you find the right recovery path. And that's where a lot of people really struggle and end up, unfortunately, failing, getting frustrated, and quitting altogether, is that they're not able to get at the core issue that is driving their burnout, that is driving their chronic stress. So for me, that ended up being my people pleasing and perfectionism tendencies. I just kept those habits that I had, of doing everything for everybody else, making sure other people were happy, never really prioritizing myself or my needs, not really paying attention to my priorities at all anyway. So, and I had no boundaries. I didn't know how to say no to people. And that all of those things were driving that stress. And so once I figured that out, I was able to use the appropriate tools to help me start reducing my stress and help me building better habits and better, mindset, pivots, in my head so that I was making better decisions and was in basically a better state of mind. It's slow, but it happens. And you start having these very small wins that start building one on top of each other. And, it really, before you know it, you're kind of going, wait a second, I feel better. Things are working out better for me. One of the tools that I have people use to work on figuring out what's at the core of their burnout, and I have to put this caveat in there, this is not what this assessment is intended to show you. But for me, it was eye opening, and I use it with every one of my clients, and we have nearly the same outcome each time. But it's called the Clifton Strengths Assessment. It's a personality assessment that helps you identify your strengths and your weaknesses so that you can focus what's right with you, focus on your strengths. That brings me to, the other part of this is that we are so busy focused, and so headstrong about focusing on what's wrong with us, all the mistakes that we make, the things that we can't do well, or the things that we don't have. And so we stay in this, icky negative space for so long that we forget that there's a bunch of stuff that we do really well, we do better. An example. So, for example, with the Clifton Strengths, it identified that one of my key strengths is actually, coming up with great ideas and brainstorming, but I'm not really great at detail. So it's ideal for me to find that, that partner to work with that, loves to do the detail work. They don't, they're not as, I keep the big picture going, but they're willing to help, focus on details. Another thing that it, pointed out is that I like to start a lot of things, but I don't like to finish them. And that gets very overwhelming. And so I needed to figure out, instead of having all these unfinished tasks and unfinished projects and unfinished hobbies or whatever was going on, staring at me and stressing me out, I needed to figure out a way to control that urge to start things, so that I'm not staring at something that I abandon or don't finish and then end up feeling bad about. I'm also a high responsibility person. I feel a lot of loyalty to people. I feel a lot of responsibility to others to do what I said I'm going to do. And, that's both a good and a bad thing. Whereas I overcommit and then, really struggle to follow through at any cost. I think we're frozen.
Can you see me?